Greetings, everyone. Joseph Washington, head waiter here at LifeSource, wishing all of you a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. To my friends who I love dearly, to my family who I love most of all, and to all of the rest of you with whom I hope to be sharing with in days and hours and months and years to come, even more, so that we all get closer and can celebrate together as one family, as one united friendship in living this life, in honoring God, in meeting the needs of each other and the people around us. I want to just share just a quick, short discussion about Thanksgiving and how it came about. Most people know it was the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock in Massachusetts in 1620 and all of the hubbub around that. But I just want to be clear with you about the record that comes from them, that gives us the reason for Thanksgiving. The people there, they were Puritans, they were Christians, and they were looking for freedom. In the land that they were in, they were not allowed to worship freely. They were not even allowed to meet regularly or on any consistent basis, and they were constantly hiding themselves from government officials who viewed them actually as kind of a terrorist group. And so, in seeking their freedom to just be able to worship God and live as they pleased, as they desired as a group, they agreed with some investors to hire a ship and to pay for equipment and tools and food and clothing and things like that for them to make a trip to what for them was the New World from the English European standpoint. So they got some investors who they promised they would repay the cost of all of the shipping and the food and the things that they needed to have to come to America. And then they would, when they arrived here, they would pay the investors back, through goods and services, through lumber and food and animal pelts and things like that, and whatever else they could find, maybe even gold and things like that. They would pay back with interest. And so in doing that, the investors, gave them a ship. The Mayflower. They also, again, provided them with all the food and things that they needed to eke out sort of a year's worth of living. Well, when they got here, things were pretty bad. In fact, they were so bad for the Pilgrims when they arrived, that between disease and accidents and deaths and all of that, even just the food, much of it had rotted. So when coming, they were sick and they were starving, and yeah, almost 50%, almost half of the people the men, women, and children who had made the trip, including the leader's wife, his wife died from disease. And so it was a pretty bad haul. And on top of that, things didn't get any better because they were operating as probably one of the earliest versions of socialism or communalism, and that is everything was owned by the group. So there was a lot of laziness on the part of people who knew that their share of the debt owed would be paid, and they didn't have to do anything. And then there were people who were working really hard to pay their share of the debt, and they weren't making a lot of progress because quite a few folks were relying on others to do all the work and simply waiting for their share of food and everything else. In fact, the leader actually writes about this. He actually wrote about it, how some people didn't want to work at all. They just wanted once they got there, they were kind of just doing their own thing, and the debt that they owed for the cost of the shipping and all of that was basically being driven by a small group of hard workers who wanted to pay off the debt. And so it's, I can't help but think about America as it sits today. Those of us who work hard, those who deliver hard, are simply paying the debts, college and otherwise, even for the care of people's children, because the parents and the people who run up these debts have decided that it's not really their responsibility. They don't have to be accountable. Well, that happened right there in the people who landed at Plymouth Rock, and that is one of the reasons things were so bad. Going from that, they actually did meet. The Native Americans in the region kind of watched them for a while at a distance and could see they were struggling. So the Indians, as we called them, the Native Americans, they came along and helped some of them learn how to fish, helped some of them learn how to grow food like corn, helped them learn how to hunt and trap beavers and deer. I mean, they were Christians, but they knew almost nothing about living in the wild. Kind of like some of us. We're hoping that if a disaster shows up, there'll be someone who won't just show us how to fish, but who'll do all the fishing for us. And all we have to do is sort of sit back and wait for them to skin it, clean it, cook it, and throw it on a plate for us. Well, that doesn't work. It really is a process of all of us working together. And that's a hard thing for some people to do. It is. Some of us really are just naturally looking for everyone else to take care of us. And that's a bad platform. So, with all the deaths that occurred and all the problems that occurred, the leaders came up on a new plan. What they said was, we're going to assign everybody a plot of land, and what you grow on that land, what you put on that land, the hunting you do, or whatever you find on that land is you. It's yours. And we will probably ask for a what would be a just portion of that to pay the debt. But everybody has to pay their own share of their debts from here going forward. And guess what? After they came to that conclusion and everyone was parceled out land in the area in which they were living there around Plymouth, Massachusetts, what became Plymouth, Massachusetts rather, they began to prosper. And so with that process underway, and they began to prosper, people began to live, people began to farm for their own, hunt for their own. Everyone began to develop their own range of skills and abilities to help to succeed for themselves. And in doing so, they traded food, they developed weapons, they traded with the Native Americans in the region, and from that, they began to survive, not just survive, but succeed as a colony. And so from that process, from that experience, they began to want to celebrate. So later that year, toward the end of that second year of their existence, they decided to have what today we call Thanksgiving. And so in that experience, in that family and celebrational experience, they invited the Native Americans to participate, who had shared with them and had helped them actually learn to survive in a land in which they knew about which they knew absolutely nothing. That's how we got Thanksgiving. Now you're going to hear some wild tales. You're going to hear some nonsense and some lunacy about how it was a racist experience and a destructive experience. No, the Pilgrims, they praised God for all that he had allowed them to survive through their being able to get past the disease that had killed so many of them, and even the laziness that so many of them had showed at the start, and for allowing them to survive that conception of socialism that meant, no matter how much work you did, your work just sort of went into the whole, of the success of the whole group. And so people who weren't working and refused to work still got their debts paid, while those who really loved to work and were trying to make it on behalf of everyone found themselves being at a loss, nearly starving to death, trying to help feed everyone else. Well, they thank God that they got out of that nonsense and became what we now call the state of Massachusetts, or the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That's how we got Thanksgiving Day. The Native Americans came and brought presents and food and everything, and they all celebrated together. That relationship remained intact for nearly 100 years, with the colonists and the Native Americans really joining together to trade and share with each other and build a common society. That is what we call Thanksgiving, and I want all of you to know that as we continue to celebrate today, that our goal, our dream for Thanksgiving is for us to be able to celebrate all that God has brought us through up to the present day, the people he's allowed us to share with, the friends and family we have grown up working with, the good things we've learned, and that God has brought us through, helped us survive through sometimes some very bad things in the course of the last year. So I want to urge you to celebrate here in the holiday. I want to urge you to reach out to some old friends, make some new friends, share with your family, and remember why we look to honor God here in America this Thanksgiving Day holiday. God bless you all. Hope to see you on a Sunday or a Saturday. And in December, we'll be having Bible study on Wednesdays. Join us.